Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Which version of the Heroes in a Half show do you think of first when I say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Are you like me and imagine the 2003 Turtles with their color coordinated weapons and cool designs? Or perhaps you think of the 80s Turtles, which marked the beginning of Turtle Mania, the 2012 Turtles, which marked the beginning of the Turtles under then Viacom. Maybe you think of the comic Turtles, the dark and gritty Mirage version, or perhaps the live action version of the 90s. 2024 marks the 40th anniversary of the Teenage Heroes. With 40 years under their belt, the Turtles are bound to have multiple iterations. Some more successful and adored by the fans, while others are seen in a less favorable light. Regardless, the Turtles have stuck around and keep returning for the new generation. The most current iteration of the Turtles began a year ago, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, and they continue their journey as current big dogs of the franchise with Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So the big question is it any good? Is it worth watching? That is what I will attempt to answer, but first we must talk about the movie that preceded Tales. Every version of the Turtles has their own tone and style that they hope to set with the audience. The Turtles of Mutant Mayhem aim to make the Turtles feel like actual teenagers, more so than any other version of the Turtles had before. This, partnered with the fact that the titular Turtles are all voiced by teenagers or young adults, results in Turtles that behave and sound the youngest we have ever seen. These Turtles are obviously meant for a younger demographic. Mutant Mayhem also set the stage for the Turtles to be free to go above ground and mingle with humans without the need for disguises or trench coat. It also introduced a number of other mutants, which in the end became allies of the Turtles. Mutant Mayhem was well received by critics and fans alike, but it didn't light up the box office despite all the positive reviews, likely a result of factors at that time. I enjoyed the movie and the new turtle design. It wasn't perfect and I had some issues, but overall it was great and highly enjoyable. Some of the issues that I had with Mutant Mayhem were that they didn't fight enough. I mean seriously, the only time I remember the Turtles actually using their weapons in combat was against the different gang leaders in the montage. Arguably one of the best scenes. The only other time I remember the weapons being used is by Splinter after he goes to break them out of the milking machine. I was also not a huge fan of Leo-April romance thing. It's just weird when they try to do such things. Final issue that I would bring up is the lack of development for all of the mutants introduced. This is mainly an issue of not enough time for all the characters introduced. This all peaked when the other mutants joined the Turtles instead of Superfly at the climax of the movie. It just didn't make sense to me that they would all turn their backs on Superfly after 15 years of being together. So does Tales fix or improve upon any of these issues, or does it just add to the issue as well as introduce more? Let's talk about Tales and the first season. So right off the bat, the tone of the Turtles remains the same. They continue to be adolescents and act as such. So if you didn't like that from the movie, it is still very much present in the show. This show is also still very much aimed at a younger demographic, and that can be seen throughout the season. Let's talk about the season. The 12 episodes can be divided into two halves, with the first 6 episodes being about Bishop and her Mechazoids, and the second half being about the East River 3. The layout of each half is basically the same as well. Each turtle gets a dedicated episode, followed by 2 episodes where they're all together and fight the main antagonist. In the first half, each turtle has to take on a Mechazoid without the help of their brothers. Each turtle must adapt and overcome the fact that they are alone, and each does so by thinking like another brother. Leo thinks like Donnie, Mikey like Leo, Raph like Mikey, and Donnie like Raph. Afterwards, they all meet up to take down Bishop. In the second half, the brothers are once again separated and this time have to take on a new group of mutants, all led by Goldfin. This time around, each turtle is joined by a mutanimal on their dedicated episode. Afterwards, they reunite and team up once again against Goldfin. That was a rough outline of what happened. So, was it any good? Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had its flaws. One of the most distracting aspects is what they did with Splinter. I thought it was funny at first when Splinter spoke in Vermin, a nice callback to Mutant Mayhem. But then he kept doing it and didn't stop. When he finally stopped, it kinda made me want them to keep talking in Vermin. They had Raph impersonate Splinter and it was all very jarring. I guess they couldn't afford Jackie Chan. Another aspect that made the show less enjoyable was how unserious it was at times. Because of the target audience being kids, they turned some characters and moments into jokes / unserious moments. The Purple Dragon's Han is introduced in the show and is nothing like any other iteration in terms of threat level or factor. Metalhead's destruction is also downplayed heavily, and there's also a subplot of a cop that doesn't like pigeons that went absolutely nowhere and is completely irrelevant, but Tales of the TMNT more than makes up for its flaws in other aspects. The animation, action sequences, art direction, and fight scenes are all fun, explosive, fast-paced, and well animated. The fight against Goldfin is one of the highlights among the fights. Speaking of Goldfin, he was one of the characters introduced in the show and was a welcome addition. My only question is, where the heck did he learn to fight like that? Mustang, Sally, and Lee were also enjoyable. Some of the Mutanimals returned and made an appearance and were fleshed out a little more. The best part of the show were the turtles. Isn't that a good thing? It was fun to see them act alone and grow up and learn, as well as gain confidence. It was also fun to see them together and show that these four really have brotherly love amongst each other, even if they constantly bicker amongst one another. The humor was also great, and while not every joke landed, not every joke was aimed at me. The voice cast, with the exception of Splinter and Mr. Beast, all returned and do an excellent job. Overall, Tales of the TMNT may have just been made for playmates to create and sell more toys, but it was still a fun time. It's not perfect by any means, but it is still more than worth a watch. I would give it an 8 out of 10 and encourage you guys to watch it, especially if you have a child watching along. The animation and amount of action compared to Mutant Mayhem are also reasons to watch. My hope is that Seth Rogen will mature these turtles as movies / more seasons come out, like actual teenagers growing up and learning from all their past experiences, and thus the tone of the future projects will mature. But I think I'm just being delusional. Who the fuck